Hello, my name is Jim McGuffey, and today I want to talk about the S.A.F.E program, which was developed by the National Association of Campus Security Administrators in response to the active shooter. Now, the S.A.F.E program will give you empowerment and knowledge so that you can have a better chance of surviving an active shooter event. It will also provide you with ideas and a plan that you can put to use, and hopefully you'll share this plan with others. Now, this program was originally designed for campuses and schools, but it can also be applied to houses of worship and other types of facilities. Now, this map here was made by Yahoo following the Sandy Hook school shooting. I want to just give you a brief history of recent shootings to provide you with an understanding of how the S.A.F.E program evolved. The first major shooting that captured national attention occurred at Columbine in April 1999, resulting in 15 people killed and 24 injured. Then there was an 8-year period without a school shooting before the Virginia Tech shooting in April 2007, killing 33 people. The next major school shooting occurred December 4th, 2012 at Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut, killing 26 people. In the following year, we had 74 school shootings, which are reflected on this map. Now, some argue that if we consider a mass shooting as being 4 or more people killed at one time, which is a number used by the FBI, then the number is only 7 incidents and not 74. But regardless, 7 is still a large number when you consider we went 8 years without a shooting. Now, my goal is not to alarm you with this brief presentation, but to empower you with a plan that can save lives. So let's talk a little bit about the police history involving the S.A.F.E program. In the Columbine shooting, police arrived on the scene and they waited for their SWAT team to arrive. Now, the mindset at that time was to secure the building, wait for the SWAT team to arrive, while hostage negotiators tried to find out what the shooters wanted. If no one surrendered, the police would drop through the ceilings, kick in the door, and shoot the bad guys. We learned, however, in Columbine that the shooters were not interested in hostages. And while the police waited for their SWAT team to arrive, people were being murdered inside those classrooms. So after this, law enforcement decided to step back and evaluate their response, and they came up with the quad entry method. Now, in the quad entry method, one officer walks down the hall backwards, another officer walks down the hall in the front direction. They're both heading the same direction with an officer on each side facing the classroom doors. In the quad method, they continue walking down the hall, checking each door. And this method worked very well until the Virginia Tech shooting occurred. What we found out that the quad system had worked well in the lower grades due to their long, straight hallways. But in the higher educational facilities where the hallways were small and extended upward, it did not work well. In the Virginia Tech shooting, when officers entered the building using this quad method, it took 8 minutes to engage a shooter since the buildings were very condensed. So law enforcement decided to step back and again reassess their approach. And using a method that was found effective in Northern Illinois campus shooting in 2008, where the first officer on the scene entered the classroom, at which time the shooter shot himself. After that shooting, law enforcement decided to send the first officer who arrived on the scene into the classroom and not wait for backup to arrive. Also, a study had been conducted, and we found that every 2.5 minutes a shooter is not engaged by law enforcement, 5 people die. So here's what we know. Traditionally, when a shooter engages law enforcement, 2 things happen. They kill themselves or they turn and run. If they don't do one of these 2 things, they engage the officer. And the good news is that law enforcement has not lost an encounter with an active shooter. So following Columbine, it was decided we needed a plan. That's where we came up with a lockdown plan. The problem with the lockdown plan is we haven't changed it since. So the question becomes, can we change in one day what we've learned all these years? And our response is yes, because we did it with 9/11. Prior to 9/11, what would happen is a plane would be hijacked, and the hijackers would begin negotiations, and the plane would land safely. But much like Columbine, the intent of the hijackers on 9/11 were not to negotiate, but the plan was simply to kill as many people as possible. We found that after 9/11, society would no longer stand by. People on those planes would not allow people with box cutters to take over a plane. And that was proven in the shoe bomber case when he was jumped by several crew members. So let's talk about lockdown. People will react to the way they've been trained. With the lockdown plan, we were trained to lock the doors if we could, turn the lights out, hide in the corner under a desk or behind a table. And that plan worked, and we practiced it for many years. Officers would walk down the hall, they'd shake a door, finding it locked, they moved on to the next door. However, had the officers breached those doors, what they would have found were a group of students huddled in a corner waiting to die. So let's try it. Well, we're not going to try a scenario using the lockdown plan, but I did want to share that during my first encounter with the S.A.F.E program, our instructor, Tom Sassini, director of police at Furman University, had participants practice a lockdown by taking us into another classroom where we turned out the lights, locked the door, and hid under our chairs and desks that were inside that classroom. A police officer who was role-playing as an active shooter would then enter that room and walk behind each of us with a fake weapon, pointing the weapon at her back. You could feel the barrel, and he would say, "You're dead." Now, it was after hearing those words, "You're dead," that it became obvious to me why they had to come up with another plan. So let's talk a little bit about the Virginia Tech shootings. Now, on the first shooting, the killer shot someone in the hallway. Now, there's not much that I can do to teach you if you're walking down a hallway and somebody pulls a gun and shoots you. But when that first shot was fired, or is fired, it sends a signal. And at that point is when we can change behavior, provided we have a plan in place. So after that first shot, the shooter walks into the first room where there were 19 people present. He kills 12 and wounded 6. One of the students said the teacher had peeked out the door, saw the shooter approaching, and started dialing 911. But it was too late. At that point, he entered the room and started killing people. There was no time to duck, take cover, or even think. He came back into that classroom 3 times before killing himself in front of that classroom. But before killing himself, he would kill more people. So the shooter then goes across the hall and enters a room with 14 people present. Here he killed 10 and he wounded 2. The shooter then goes across the hall into another room where 19 people were present, just like in the other room with 19, but in this classroom, only 2 were killed. The difference was that in this room, Professor Labrescu held the door shut with his body so his students could jump out the window. Professor Labrescu was a Holocaust survivor who unfortunately died on Holocaust Day, saving his students. But unlike the other room where no action was taken, we had 2 people killed instead of 12. The shooter then enters another room where 13 people are present. Here, 5 people were killed and 6 were wounded. So why didn't we have a higher body count in this room? But because the second time the shooter returned to the room to finish killing, they had it barricaded. He then walks into the last classroom where 12 people were present, but no one was killed in this room. Students in this room had heard gunshots and a woman scream, so someone peeked out the door and saw the shooter approaching. At this time, 2 students barricaded the door, which the shooter forced open about 6 inches, so they pushed the door closed, and he shot 2 rounds into the door. He then reloaded his clip and continued walking down the hallway. The young man who had helped to barricade that door was interviewed. He had originally hid behind a classroom podium, but he said he knew if he didn't do something that he was going to die. That is why we believe in the SAFE approach. So, what is the SAFE approach? Well, S stands for secure, A for alert, F for fight, E for evacuate. Now, you can use any piece of SAFE as best fits the situation. If you can evacuate first, we encourage you to get out as quick as you can. But you don't want to run into the shooter. So don't evacuate if you don't know what's happening. Again, however, if you cannot escape right away, then we teach the SAFE program. Secure starts with the lockdown. Now, earlier I said that we had not changed the lockdown since Columbine. Well, parts of that program have worked very well. Locking a door is a great strategy, but the problem is not all doors lock. Another issue is dealing with the key during a crisis. Can you imagine looking for a key with an active shooter walking down the hallway? So if possible, lock the door when the class starts and keep it locked until the class is over. However, be aware that a locked door does not prevent a shooter from shooting through the door or kicking it in. So if you can, we want you to lock the door, but don't stop there. Start barricading that door with tables, with chairs, with anything that you can use. Disable the door mechanisms, such as the hydraulic lifts at the top of the door. Tie your belt around the piece. Cover the door window if you can, but we don't want you doing that if the shooter's near the door. So know what you have in your room that you can use to barricade a door if needed. And again, just align the tables and the chairs and the file cabinets against that door. Tape the door if possible, but again, not when the shooter's present. And if there's a window in that classroom, break out the window and start evacuating through the window. So let's talk about alert. We've talked about what it means to secure. Let's see what alert is. Alert, the most important thing here is to alert the police as soon as possible. Call 911. They will alert the people who need to be alerted. But you also want to immediately notify those around you. Remember that every 2.5 minutes, a shooter goes without police intervention, 5 people are killed. But it's important, after calling the police, that you notify the people around you, because they may not have heard the shot. They may have associated the noise with something else. Perhaps construction was going on in the background. So even though others in the room, you may think they hear the shots, it's important that you confirm and let them know there is a shooter outside of that classroom, and we need to be prepared. We need to jump into action. So after alert, the next part of SAFE is to fight. Now, you're not required to do anything, but remember, you do have the right to defend yourself. And if you just sit there, the shooter is going to try and kill you. And when this is your only choice, to sit there or to fight or get shot, I hope that you choose to fight, not only for your life, but for the lives of those with you. So, how do we begin to fight? Well, you begin by gathering weapons, books, staplers, cell phones, monitors, any type of object that you can throw at the shooter to distract them. Now, if you throw a monitor at a shooter and it knocks him out, well, that's great. But the goal here, again, is to distract and disorient. So somebody would ask, well, do you want me to throw things at a person with a gun? Again, we want you to throw whatever you can at that person with a gun. This will allow the attack team to go into place. So let's talk about the attack team. Now, hopefully by locking and barricading the door, you won't need an attack team. But if the shooter is able to breach the door before people can escape through a window, if one does exist, you must have a plan. And part of that plan is an attack team. With the attack team, you assign one person for each limb. So you have one person with one arm, another person with another arm, and another person with each on one leg. And their job is to take control of the body part that they're assigned. Wrap yourself around that body part. And then the two holding the leg will jump up quickly, causing the shooter to fall forward. Now, if you don't have 4 capable people to assign to a body part, then assign those that you can to attack the shooter while others are distracting the shooter, which we'll discuss further in a few moments. The point is that having a plan in place when an active shooter breaches your door will most likely end with a more positive result than hiding in a corner or under a table waiting to be shot. Now, here's the bad news for the attack team. 1 or 2 people may get shot. The good news is just because you're shot does not mean you're going to die. And I'd rather be shot on the attack team than be shot huddled in the corner. Now, if you have a 5th person, you want that person to be prepared to take control of the shooter's head, because that head can be trying to bite people, and at the same time, take your thumbs and press in on the eyes of the active shooter so that you can blind them so they can't see what's going on. Also, that 5th person can be prepared to grab the weapon and also to replace one of the other people that may be injured or getting tired. So the biggest question of the day is, what do you do with the weapon? Well, we don't want you to pick up the gun and use it. The gun may not work, it may jam, it may have already jammed. And we don't want you standing there with a weapon if the police are en route, because they could be entering the building or the room at any moment. And if you take that gun and run down the hallway, that's not going to end in a positive result either. So what we encourage you to do is take a garbage can, place it on top of the gun, and then set on it. Now, what if the active shooter begins to break loose? Well, if that's the case, take that garbage can with the gun in it and run down the hallway. Because at that point, if you're running down the hallway with the garbage can, you're far less apt to be shot than if you're running down the hallway holding a gun. What about a rifle? Well, if you can, put the rifle in the garbage can. If it's not big enough, toss it out the window if there's a window. If there's no window, hide it under something. Again, while someone is barricading the door, someone should be breaking out a window if one exists. Now, you can survive if you've been shot, but you have to know a couple of first aid techniques, because EMTs cannot assist you until the shooter has been captured. There are 2 techniques that work effectively to slow down the bleeding. They are the tampon and the tourniquet. So I encourage you to brief up on the tourniquet usage so that you're prepared for this event should it occur. Now, I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, send a note to me at jimmcguffey@hargray.com. If you want to learn more about my background, you can visit my website at asecurityconsultants.com. I've been in security management for nearly 45 years. I've served in the military and law enforcement and in the private security sector for those years. I also have another website, Church Security Consultant, which provides guidance to those interested in improving safety for places of worship. In closing, I want to also have a special thanks for the National Association of Campus Security Administrators for making this plan available. And please consider sharing this plan with others. And again, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.